you see from full pads yesterday?
Oh, good intensity. I thought it was a good first day. We had such good weather. That's helped out a lot too. Made it through pretty unscathed, which is always a big thing for me.
What do you look at specifically as you go through a practice? I mean, is it different every single day, or you have a routine, like you look at certain groups, or how do you?
Yeah, I think, sometimes I'll try to take a certain position group and just kind of break that down a little bit. A lot of it's just the tape, you're watching for certain things. A lot of times it's just at practice, sometimes it's a good opportunity for me to converse with different people, whether it's the trainers, the strength coaches, or things like that, and just kind of get updates from their departments as well. But live looks are always really, really important when you're scouting players, but when they're your players and you know them as much, it's maybe not, you're looking for some things, but it's really more the tape.
With that said, when you got a young guy like Romeo that comes in and makes a splash play pretty much every day, but he's not in pads yet, you haven't seen him until yesterday in full pads, how conducive is that football environment to getting an evaluation of what he can bring you, or how much do you have to just wait to see it live? Or what can you glean from that?
Yeah, I think it's exciting to, watch players have good starts, but you also know there's going to be ups and downs in camp and preseason. I think as the physical toll and the mental toll start to load on these young players, you're going to kind of see some ups and downs. So it's a great start. I think it's really a credit to his preparation, and how he's attacked those opportunities. He's been prepared for the opportunities that have come his way. So it's a good lesson. But there's, as we get in here the next week or so, that mental load that they're putting on these guys, along with the physical, as their bodies start to kind of, feel the stress of what they've been going through. I think you're going to see some ups and downs.
You say great start. What have you seen from him that's impressed you in the first week?
Really, I think whenever we give these rookies that come into your building for the first time, or first year players, you do a lot of obviously work scouting these guys, and you're kind of like, when you scouted them, is that what you saw? And I think that's what we saw with Romeo. He was a very productive college player. He was a guy that could win multitude of different ways as a route runner, speed, power, explosiveness, those kind of things. And he's like I said, he's really attacked it. I know Matt and other guys have talked about his preparation and his habits. I think that's allowed him to kind of take advantage of those opportunities.
Brian, I think 83% of your draft picks have been from Power 5 conferences. So when you deviate and take a guy like Dubs, and you go outside that, do you have to see, extra stuff on film, for example? Do you highlight certain games, maybe where he's, playing a Cal or somebody like that?
Yeah, I think, it's when you're taking guys from Power 5 schools, particularly, some of those powerhouse type of places, that every day in practice they're going against an NFL type player. So every rep they take, not only in games but in practice, are going against that kind of caliber, that kind of size, that kind of ability. So when you do, go to some different levels, it's not that they're not facing good competition, it's just probably not as consistently. So certainly with any player we're scouting, the best competition they play is what we're going to spend the most time on. We're going to value that the most. But every player is, unique, that, and how we go about it and how their career is.
Back to Aaron's question about what are you watching. I think all of us like watching the one-on-ones, which is probably stupid person football, right? It's easy to figure it out. But what are you watching there, or do you not put much into it? Like we were talking to Jaron Reed yesterday. He's maybe not necessarily trying to win a rep, while maybe the rookie lineman is trying like crazy to win a rep.
Right. Yeah, I think it's important. I think in any competitive periods are important, right? Because that's what we're here for, and that's what we do. At the same time, to your point, a lot of these guys are working on things through that. They may attack a certain rep because they're working on a specific move or specific part of their game. So, early in camp like this, I think, through the OTAs and even early in camp here, I try to hold back on too much evaluation, because really, guys are still learning. Guys are still trying to get in their comfort zone, working on things. As we get, another week into this, a couple preseason games under our belt, I think that's really when the evaluations start to come out.
Around the draft, we ask you if you're looking for production or if you're looking for physical traits. But the headline with Romeo, obviously coming in for us, is that he led the FBS in catches last year.
Right.
How much value does that production and that experience give you?
It's important. Right. That's because that's ultimately, what matters is the production part of it when they get to this league. When you're evaluating a guy in college, it's I think when they've had production, Obviously, that gives you some comfort when you're scouting, but at the same time, you're trying to predict what they're going to do here. And the physical traits have a big part of that as well. So there's plenty of guys that are very, very productive in college that just don't really have the physical traits to play at this level. So you weigh it all. But the one thing you know about a guy like Romeo or some of these other guys, on their particular team, like they did it. They were the number one, and they were very productive, and they were a difference maker. And so they've been in that situation. They've been asked to do that for their team, and he accomplished that. So again, that doesn't mean that that's going to happen at this level, but that he's cleared that hurdle before.
Ron, how fluid are the conversations right now on things like 6 or 7 receivers? This sports safety gives us something on the back end versus the special teams value. What's that process like, even at this point in camp, or even at that point?
Yeah, we're not really at that point yet. I think we're trying to allow these guys to get into a comfort zone, compete. Every rep in practice is important. But when we get to these preseason games and how they react between those white lines without a coach in their ear, without, you know what I mean? I think that where we'll really start to focus in on that. And as we get close to that Kansas City game, I think we'll start having those conversations like, do we have what we need right now? Do we need to go outside the building to try to fill some of those needs? But I think we got good competition across the board. As we deal with the injuries over the next 3 or 4 weeks, we're probably going to have to move some things around to get our numbers right. But I like the competition. I like the way they've worked. I think their urgency and intensity has risen each day. I thought that yesterday was a really good day, so we'll see how the next few days go.
What do you think of a guy like Zach Tom getting thrust into a couple of prominent roles right away and jumping into this?
Yeah, that's always a tough thing for the coaches when you have a young player. Like, you leave him at one spot just so he can get comfortable in that one spot, or you move him around. I think it's a credit to Zach. He's a very smart guy. He's played a bunch of positions in college, so and to be able to kind of do that this early. Certainly, we like the versatility of the offensive lineman. I mean, that's a big thing for us. So to see him kind of go from practice to practice at different spots and kind of perform pretty well, that's exciting.
With Christian, he's going to have to make up for lost time whenever he returns. How much concern is there about what he'll be able to do, and what you saw in the pre-draft process, what gives you maybe confidence he can kind of catch up quickly once he gets out there?
Yeah, it doesn't give me too much. I'm not too concerned with it long term. But anytime any player misses the time that you're missing right now, I mean, you're going to have to be in catch-up mode. He's a really smart guy. I know he works really hard. He's got really good work habits. So I know he'll get there. But you'd love to have him out there right now. But again, he's a young player that we have a lot of hope for and expect him to be a big part of what we're doing moving forward. So we're not going to rush it.
There's oftentimes there's not a lot of patience with the bottom of the depth chart kind of guys. It's always churning over. But with Yash, obviously you did show patience, and you've been rewarded for that. What did you see after 2 years to make you think you should give him a third shot?
Yeah, I think the first rookie minicamp we had here, you saw all the physical traits with Yash, and even coming out of college at Virginia Tech. I mean, he had all that. It was just a matter of, we knew it was going to take time to get him where he was, and you got to give him a lot of credit because he has busted his tail to get where he's at right now. And I mean, from a scout's point of view, when you walk out there, you can watch one set, a guy that big that moves like he does, and you're going to be intrigued. But he's come a long way. I mean, I know you guys have seen it as well, but he's come a long way, and it really is a big credit to his work ethic, and then just the time that Steno and Luke have put into that. And yeah, I'm excited for him. He's really worked his way into a guy who's going to have a long career.
As an evaluator, do you leave it up to Coach LaFleur, this coaching staff, to how much you guys do show Friday night in the family night, how much hitting is done, et cetera?
Yeah, we'll have some of those conversations, as far as snap counts and things like that as we go. Again, it's really early right now. But, how Matt structures the practice, that's kind of all Matt, and what we're trying to see. As we get closer into the preseason games and stuff, we'll start having some conversations about, hey, maybe we need to see a little bit more of this, and maybe we don't need to see as much of this. I got a lot of Ted Thompson. I mean, I'm seeing some of these guys out there who are just, really eager and playing really well right now, and you just kind of want to bubble wrap them until September and just kind of stock them away. And we'll let a bunch of these other guys get some more opportunities because we know what some of these guys can do. But at the same time, I think you really need this time to come together as a team, as a unit, the timing on offense and defense, and all the different things. For us to come out of the gates with a good start is important. So, but there's some veteran players that look really good right now.
There's been multiple times in practice where we've seen either Aaron pull a guy aside, you get a conversation with Shul for like 5 minutes at practice, or the other way around, that they might pull him aside. What does that tell you about him that he's having those conversations?
About Aaron?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I've seen that, most of his career. I think, he's a competitive guy. He wants to win, and he wants his team, to do well. And so I think that's part of it. And I also think that, just from my view, just, a guy who's had so much experience and realizing that, he has so much to offer these guys and give back. And I think when he sees stuff in guys, I think to me that's a really good teammate, right? Like and it's like that. I think I've always seen it, but I know it's very helpful to our football team.
Don't you think sometimes maybe as guys get older that they might want to be less willing to do that stuff too?
Yeah, I think he's. Yeah, maybe. I mean, I can't. There might be guys that are insecure about their spot. I don't think he is, but I just think I do think he feels like we all do sometimes. You want to leave this place better than you found it, and I think that's with the I think he wants to leave an impact and a legacy with some of the guys, the teammates and players that are here. That's a question for him, but that's just my take on it.
Brian,
Amari was telling us yesterday how when he got thrown into that Arizona game last year, he felt like a freshman in a top 5 matchup in college. And he said now it's like night and day just because of his body, his preparation. How have you seen him come into this camp?
Yeah, obviously he did a great job this offseason, kind of getting into a different kind of shape. I never thought he was not in shape, but he was a bigger, had more weight on him last year and stuff. So yeah, I think with Amari, I just think it's opportunity. I think the more opportunities he gets, the more you're going to see him kind of come out of a shell and really produce. But I think he's I think like a lot of these guys, and I'm sure you've talked to a lot of them. The more comfortable they are on the offense and they get in their comfort zone, the more their real talents kind of start to show. I think I've always kind of felt middle of year 2 into year 3 is when you see most players kind of get to that point where they really know what they're doing. And they just they're not thinking anymore. They just let their talents kind of show. Some guys get it faster, and that's great. But I think that's usually kind of the norm. And as they go and they grow, when they really get that down and they do hit that, you kind of, as an evaluator, you kind of see it. And then you kind of know they're there, and off they go.
What has been maybe the biggest area of growth that you've seen from Jordan Love going into his 3rd camp, and what is the biggest area that you want to see when the snaps are live in the preseason?
Yeah, I think the last 2 off seasons when Aaron was gone, he had a chance to kind of take the whole OTAs, and a lot of that time I thought you saw some growth with just kind of command in the huddle, taking over the offense. And I think now I just think again of all the positions, the quarterback one obviously mentally has probably got the most on him, and I just think he's in year 3. Again, he hasn't played as many games as we would have liked him to play because of some of the things that have happened in COVID and then getting injured and stuff like that. But I think you're just seeing a more confident level of okay, I know what's going to happen before it happens, which I think is really important for the quarterback, all players, but especially the quarterback.
Brian, you took a decent amount of heat, I think, on Rashawn Gary on that pick, especially after his rookie season. Is he one of those guys that maybe you're talking about there in terms of bubble wrapping? I mean, do you see it out there that he might be ready?
He would be one of those guys. The heat we took, I mean, it never really made a lot of sense to me because the heat that actually Rashawn was taking, obviously we do a lot of work on these guys and it never really made sense. So, Rashawn's really taking the path we thought he would. Quite frankly, if we wouldn't have had Preston and Z, that his rookie year, he probably got a lot more snaps and, he'd be maybe a little further along from a production wise, but he's every time since his rookie year, since we've had him, he's affected the passer, and I just think he's one of those guys that he's getting into that point where all the physical skills and now knowing what's happening on the field before it happens are coming together, and he's wrecking practice, so.
Brian, one of the national reporters talked to Aaron yesterday and came to the conclusion that Aaron feels like this roster is like some of those Brady teams that won a Super Bowl with the Patriots, to where he doesn't feel like he's having to shoulder the load as much as recent years because of the health of the defense and the running game and everything like that. Have you built this roster around that to take some of the pressure off Aaron, or how do you manage that situation?
I think we're just trying to build the best overall football team, we can with the opportunities that present themselves. It really hasn't been about, I mean, we'd like to throw a lot on his shoulders because he's a really good player, you know, and he certainly has done that. But yeah, I mean, I think we're 6 practices in. You know, what this team's going to be as we move forward is, we got a lot of work to do. On paper, I think there's reason to be excited, and I like the way the guys are working. But we got a long way to get to that first game, and we're gonna need some luck, to kind of stay healthy and get to where we need to be. But I do think, and I've talked about this before, you want to try to have a team that can win in multiple ways, right? Whether it's offense, defense, special teams, and I think this team has the potential to do that. And so we'll see kind of how it goes. But that I like the way they're pushing right now.
Ryan, going back to Matt's question about Amari, was there any frustration on your part? You were very open about how much you liked that player. You traded up for him, and then the Randall Cobb thing happens, and then basically he doesn't play. You talk about opportunities. Even after Randall goes down, you really didn't get on the field with any regularity. As a guy who really likes the kid and likes the player, is that frustrating for you as a GM?
I wouldn't say it's frustrating for me. I think sometimes I think players go through the kind of frustration when we take players in the draft. It's obviously with a long-term thought process, and we're very, very bullish on Amari Rodgers and what he could do for this football team. But as you guys know, whether for all kinds of different reasons, things change as you go, and certainly that changed his opportunities that he might have gotten. But at the end of the day, it's a player's responsibility, whether they're a first-round pick and getting a lot of opportunities, or whether they're an undrafted guy getting few. You can only control what you can control. So the opportunities you get, you got to be prepared for, and you got to make the best of those opportunities. And if you do, more opportunities will come your way. So you can't ask for more of the way he's working. And certainly, I think in this particular training camp, you've seen him make the most of his opportunities, and I'm excited for him. I think not only on offense but on special teams, well, he's going to have an opportunity to make his impact, and I expect him to.
Ryan, on special teams, you hired a veteran coordinator, you've got a veteran kicker, you signed a veteran punter, and a long snapper, you've got 2 young guys. I'm wondering if you think you've got an NFL long snapper there, or if it's those 2 guys against like every unemployed snapper on earth.
I think with specialists, they're always working against every other unemployed or guys throughout the league that are on other teams. So, but I like the 2 young guys that are working. I think we're kind of getting to that point, especially with family night and then this preseason games coming up, that I think we're gonna hopefully kind of get to a point where we might have an idea where we're going to go there. It's disappointing that Mason's kind of where he's at, because he hasn't had a chance to work with these guys right now. But yeah, I think obviously with Mason and Pat, you got 2 guys that have done it a long time in this kind of weather. So really the snappers are the 2 guys we've got to kind of get to a point of to make sure that they can handle that as well.
Special teams, how did that dynamic work with, in special teams, how did that dynamic work with Rich during the offseason in terms of bringing in some of those former Raiders, and how much has that helped having guys with familiarity in that special teams?
Yeah, I mean, really the 2 guys, obviously Keyshawn Nixon, he was the guy kind of, during the fall last year as we go through our free agency prep, he was a guy, we knew that in our corner room that, at the time, obviously, Razul wasn't signed, and Shandon from last year, our nickel and stuff like that. There was some uncertainty there. So Keyshawn was a guy that was kind of on our radar just as a nickel corner and a good teams player. Certainly when Rich came and had his affection for the player, that certainly was important. And then Dallin, obviously being a really good special teams player, that when he was let go, I could count the seconds before my phone was gonna ring on that one. But we had a lot of conversations. It's like whenever we bring new coaches in, we usually have a sit down and go through their roster, that they and get their intake on their input on what they saw out of those guys, their work habits, and just to kind of get a better feel of how they'll fit here. So, yeah, those 2 guys, I think, I'm excited about those guys and their ability, not only on special teams but on defense as well, to kind of see how they fit. It'll be good to get Keyshawn back out there. I'm hopeful that he's out there pretty soon.
2 more, please. Brian, Leroy's finally getting in this weekend for the Bowl. I know you were just breaking in. He's kind of a college scout at that time. I'm just wondering if you had any memories of him. I know obviously he meant a huge lot, to Ron and.
Yeah, I mean, I was pretty young, but he was, when I walked into this building for the first time, he was one of those legends. You get Brett and Reggie and him and a bunch of other guys. But yeah, I mean, I think the thing that I remember most about Leroy is the affection that Ron and the other scouts and coaches had for him, and what they thought of him as a player. They held him in such high regard, and they were so important to, Fritz Schirmer and all those, the way they did things on defense. And, I respected those guys so much and what they thought about players. To hear them talk about him in the regard they did, I mean, this is probably long overdue.
Hey, Brian, follow up on that. Did the way LeRoy played the position change the way Ron and then ultimately you scouted the position?
That's a hard question for me to answer. That'd be a great question for Ron. I think the one thing, Leroy started out as a corner and was moved to safety, and I think just in the league in general, I think you've seen, there was a time probably in the 70s and 80s where those safeties were more like linebackers, and it was more of a run game. And I think he probably was one of those first guys, him and Ronnie Lott, that started out as corners that shifted to safety, and because it became such an important thing. And you look at safeties now and their ability to cover ground and match up is more important than it ever was then. So that's probably a question for some of the guys I started with more than me.